since it's another day, billions will kneel and pray. Anything to aid escape from the world so cold and gray.
That's a good boy.
And we're back with another episode of Bones and Tubs. Here on this beautiful Wednesday. It's warm, balmy.
Hot.
It's hot. Even the studio is a little bit warmer than normal.
Yeah.
Coming off of our 2-part CIA episodes that I think went really well.
I enjoyed it.
Oh,
I
I
love
did
anything
too.
that makes me feel like I feel like if you hate yourself while you're reading it, then you know you're doing a good job.
So we loved doing the 2-part CIA so much that we're doing another 2-part episode.
Yeah.
Well, but this is for a different reason. This isn't because, well, I mean, technically, yeah, we had enough information to fill 2 episodes, but part of the reason was because Bones is going on vacation next week.
Going to a gay cruise.
Yeah.
On the East Coast.
So we had to do both this week's episode and next week's episode in one day. So you're going to get all of it just 2 weeks apart.
Yeah.
But today's saucy, juicy, sometimes controversial topic.
Always controversial.
And
I'm glad we don't have any Zionist friends.
but I'd say the total of the topics is probably going to be what Zionism and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in the West Bank and Gaza.
Yeah. I just scrawled Zionism and Gaza, but that was just
So
the start of it.
when the other day we'd already decided to do this show. We had decided a couple weeks ago we were going to do this one. I was talking to St. Catherine about it, and she was talking about how this last strain of episodes she really, really enjoyed.
Yeah, peace be upon her. By the way.
And this just lets you know how controversial this topic is. When I told her, she's like, "What are you guys doing this week?" I said Zionism and Gaza Strip. She got this look on her face, like this, like I
think
I don't know about that.
if she looks into it, she'll be just as upset, if not more upset, than we were.
Because the thing is like I think that because there is here's the problem with this topic is that it's been tainted and poisoned by people who are okay, and this is I'm just going to put it out there at the beginning of the show so everybody understands this right from the get. There's a difference between being anti-Semitic and being anti-Zionist.
Yeah, the real Jews will tell you that. You can go to a website, one of the ones I pulled from, TrueTorahJews.org, and it's a large branch off, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
of Jewish people that follow the Torah and are adamantly opposed to the state of Israel and are very anti-Zion. And they say anti-Zionism is not the same as anti-Semitism.
Exactly. I have no problem with the religion of Judaism whatsoever as an existing thing. And I would never advocate people being hurt because they're Jews.
Do you have any weird, like, epigenetic screaming in there, like, Der Juden?
Yeah, my German heritage screams out forth from the genes that I own,
Right.
telling me that I shouldn't feel this way. But the thing is the problem, like I said, it's been poisoned, and it's funny that people bring this up because, like, I think we're going to find more in common in this episode with people who lean towards the left than right-thinking people.
I think right-thinking people are kind of asleep at the wheel.
Or they're active. They're pro-Zionist.
Well, I mean, they're just asleep at the wheel as far as knowing what's really going on over there.
I mean, the thing is, Israel wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the fact there were pro-Zionist Christians.
Right. Before we get into it, though, can I hit those 2 things I asked you about?
Yeah.
One, I was going through the Twitter, and Elon Musk, you know how he's just starting a
Off
business
the chain.
every fucking day. He starts a new business.
He's AI woke.
Yeah. He had started talking shit sometime last week about some media had posted something shitty about his Tesla car.
Yeah.
And he didn't like that.
Yeah.
Not because it was true, because it was fake news.
Yeah.
So he called out the particular journalist, told him he was a shitbag. Basically, he said he was going to start his own news site, but not like a news.
It was a site used to vet media sources, correct?
Yeah, over time, he would, like, the website would show you how correct different journalists were,
Kind of like
a rating.
Kind of like I would say how Snopes operates to an extent,
Except not.
without a lean.
Yeah, no lean. Because he's AI, he has no lean.
Yeah, and so
Everybody's favorite AI.
supposedly what Facebook was supposed to be doing too, which was vetting fake articles. Which here's the thing, you got to admit, you have to everything you get. We get sent a lot of articles, we get sent a lot of stuff. You have to. I personally vet everything that I get. I check multiple media outlets to see how much validity there is to said article, because the thing is, there's fake news all the time.
Fake news.
Coming from every direction.
Right. I'm excited to see it. He was going to try and call it Pravda, which is already taken by Ukraine. And so he decided to go Pravda. Prov.com.
Duh.
So he bought that because he has more money. I mean, as an AI, he has infinite resources.
Yeah. I heard, yeah, and he wants to open a chocolate factory.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, he's getting a lot of flack because people are calling him fascist because he believes that media outlets need to be vetted and their integrity needs to be checked.
It was funny. He pointed out how butthurt the journalist became. He was like, you guys talk shit about people all the time without proper sourcing or anything like that. Now you don't want people to properly source and follow what you're doing? That's crazy.
Like, perfect example of this week, all these new media outlets were posting these pictures from immigration camps, and they were showing pictures of children in cages, and everyone was going nuts and wild. We come to find out that the pictures were from 2014. They just released them. It wasn't under the current administration. It was under the former administration that those atrocities were occurring, which they probably still are.
He's a Democrat, though. It's fine.
Yeah.
You could find pictures of children in dog cages from West Dayton before the mothers go out clubbing.
Yeah.
I found those on Facebook a couple times.
All the time.
You see them doing like the selfies in the bathroom, and they've either got a giant shit log in the toilet that you can see, or you got like 3 or 4 kids in a dog cage.
They got like water dishes set out with some Doritos in with the food bowl.
I'm going out to make more kids I can't take care of. You guys don't do anything crazy. I'll be back in about 6 hours.
They put a padlock on the cage gate.
They're naked, and there's just a puppy pad on the ground to clean up their piss and shit.
Yeah.
Because unlike dogs, kids will shit and piss when they sleep.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a fact.
They don't have that. Well, I mean, yeah, we both have children. We know that they'll literally piss and shit into a place that is confined within their own body. Right. So, or outside their body, I should say.
They look at you like it's your problem, or your fault, rather. Like, I shit in your diaper. Fuck off.
Yeah.
No.
But
the other thing I wanted to mention, I went through some of my grandpa's stuff. Mm-hmm. They had like a bunch of envelopes as far as different ancestry stuff. Mm-hmm. And they've got a handwritten family tree that goes back to 1770.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Some of the names are like not the same as what you would find on Ancestry, so I'm trying to put it all together. One was just said Ann ? And then it said Native American.
See, the thing is, it's like, and it happened with my family tree too, is like back in the day, people gave less of a fuck about names apparently and could just change their name at will.
Yeah.
Like, perfect example, my great-great-great-grandpa, we had trouble at first finding any information about him simply because he immigrated from Germany to the United States, and he changed his name from Heinrich Imhoff with 1 F to Henry Imhoff with 2 Fs.
I prefer 2.
So, and then there was another one, my great-grandpa, and I don't know if this is a thing or not, but there was 2 sets of documents on him. And one of them, his name, it's the same birth dates, it's everything, but one's name is Earth Kolb, like Earth, Earth Kolb, and the other one, and supposedly, I called my mom, and she's like, no, his name was Earl. And I'm like, that's weird. I was like, because there's an Earth Kolb that was born the same day as him. So something tells me he may not like the name Earth and change it to Earl.
It's always been Earl, fuck off.
Yeah.
I found out that my second great-grandfather, his name was Alan Riley Colvin. Mm-hmm. He was, I wouldn't say a poor farmer, but, typical disprover of the white privilege argument farmer in Kentucky.
Yeah.
And he joined the Confederacy when he was 19.
Nice.
Which, to anybody that starts screeching out there, I found out that most of the small-time farmer Confederate soldiers were also abolitionists. Because only the big rich farmers could afford slaves, and it was messing with their way of life. Yeah. They were Confederates only in the fact that they hated the federal government, and they thought that the power should stay at the state. So that explains some of my hatred.
Yeah, I'd say so. It's in your genes.
His great-grandfather he died in the war against the crown. Yeah. So that was cool. Mm-hmm. So fuck the crown and fuck the federal government.
Yeah, there you go.
Makes me feel good. He went to Johnson Island Prison, which is up by Lake Erie.
Oh, so everybody had a bad time.
Yeah, he was 21 or 22 when he got locked up there. Mm. He was a lieutenant at the time. Mm. And then while he was inside, they ranked him up to captain.
Wow.
He contracted some type of disease, got out, had time to do that thing.
Yeah.
And he made his son, who he named after a Confederate general.
Didn't you tell it was Forrest something?
Samuel Forrest Colvin.
Yeah.
Once he was born, 60 days later, he kicked off. He died.
Damn.
But come on.
Damn.
Just because he had just enough time to get out and do that thing. Yeah. I'm here.
Everybody. Just enough time to get a little greasy, and then he had to step off.
Dip in some of that sauce.
Yeah.
Some of that genetic sauce. Some of that. That's why you're hearing this podcast now, Sauce.
I was to say, anything else in the news here lately? The only thing I saw in the last few days was people getting all crazy because Roseanne Barr got fired from her new TV show.
Yeah.
And my opinion on this is simple. ABC is a private corporation. However they want to run it, that's how they deserve to run it. And the same thing goes with the NFL as well.
Right. If you want to be known as supporting either the message or censorship, then let it be known. But
the thing is, at the end of the day, it's up to
That's what I'm saying.
It was their decision to make.
Let it be known, whatever side you're on.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
They're a private corporation. They're allowed to do what they want.
Right.
I'm always on the side of they don't have to follow public opinion or anything like that.
Fuck your feelings.
Fuck your feelings. Same thing goes with the NFL.
I just wish there was a corporation that would get behind one of these people that jerked off into a house plan or said something fucked up about a group of people, so people could be like, man, they're raw.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the NFL thing. Like, so they're a private company, and now they're going to find people who don't stand for the flag and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Well, they're a private company. They're allowed to do what they want. Now, the thing is, like, people are trying to say, well, it's because they're anti-black. Well, I wouldn't say that much. I would go on to say it's probably because they lost a lot of money last year.
That's it.
And they're not trying to lose any more money.
We really need more monies.
But I think in the long run, they're going to find out that this is an even shittier decision than not doing anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, definitively.
Yeah.
They're going to find that out.
For sure. I like, we were doing some training at work last week before last, and there was just this argument going on, typical left and right argument between two individuals. And it ended up turning into the Colin Kaepernick subject. Mm-hmm. And one of them was like, why do you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And I just said mind control. You didn't have anything to do with the founding of this or any of that. You were hanging out, like, I can't remember, Bill Burr. No. One of the comedians that's long since passed of cancer. Yeah. He did his stand-up about it. And he said, what did you have to do with anything to do with your country? Absolutely nothing. Your parents fucked. Yeah. And you were born here. You were hanging out in the spirit realm. You were screaming, France! France! But they didn't listen. No. Here you are. Yeah. So everybody gets all up in arms about a flag or an anthem and whatever. Yeah. That's just my opinion.
I mean, that's a good opinion, too. I mean, really, what are you going to, in this day and age, like...
I like that black and yellow flag.
Yeah. It's a good time.
It's whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, so I would say when it comes to current events, that's where I would fall on all that.
What about Tommy Robinson?
Oh, that's right.
I almost forgot about him.
Holy shit, free Tommy.
Yeah, free Tommy Robinson. Now, as far as I've gone into this guy was charged not too long ago, and he had an 18-month prison sentence over his head. Yeah. And the judge just said, basically just trying to shut him up. Because what he was doing was, I don't know if anybody knows this, but there's a massive rape epidemic going on in the UK and several other countries that are on the end of this massive immigration problem. Because some of those guys like to rape.
I mean, that's
not saying they're all rapists.
It's also not to say that people that weren't there before don't like to rape either.
Right. But he was just bringing light to it, the Muslim rape gangs, or the grooming gangs as they were called. So the judge, charged him with whatever it was, because you're not allowed to have free speech in a country where they take your fucking guns away. They can do whatever they want to you. Yeah. And so he went out and was live streaming. I think he ended up getting, at the time, somewhere around 8,000 or 9,000, almost 10,000 people in his stream. Mm-hmm. And he was just getting these alleged child rapists' faces out there. Mm-hmm. And they were all like, fuck your mother. Mm-hmm. You fuck your father. Your wife is a prostitute. They weren't trying to hide the fact that they were
greasy,
aggressive and greasy shitheads.
Yeah.
So he stood out there for about an hour and a half. And once the last of them made it in, he was surrounded by about 7 cops, all wearing the checkerboard floor pattern around their foreheads. Yeah. And they arrested him for disturbing the peace. And then the judge sentenced him immediately to his 18-month prison sentence, where somebody was just killed by a Muslim gang in that prison not too long ago for throwing bacon at him. So he's got a rough road to haul. And then they ordered a blackout. The country couldn't report on it.
We could report on it, though.
We could, because fuck the crown.
Yeah.
So then I think it was like a 72-hour period. Mm-hmm. And then eventually they were like, Jesus Christ, because everybody was storming the fucking gates of Leeds Court.
The UK is on some next levels of autistic screeching right now, I'd have to say.
Here's my opinion. Tell me what you think. I'm glad to see people And I don't know, he could be a shitbag. I don't know. I haven't looked that far into him, but Agris Girl posted he's a shitbag.
Okay, yeah, and that's the thing. Okay, he's a shitbag. Shouldn't have been arrested for what he was doing, though.
Why is he a shitbag?
Well, some people are attacking him because the thing is like what he was doing. I guess the way UK laws are set up, like people are allowed before they've been convicted, are allowed anonymity. Like they can't expose their faces or anything until after they've been charged with a crime.
Okay.
And he trying to expose them like that could lead to them being their cases dismissed.
So the same way, well, we don't want that.
Exactly. So that's why people are like, he's kind of a shitbag because
they've got a bunch of people over there. Was like their main, was it BBC? Where they said that they would fly a helicopter over a white dude's house if he was an accused pedophile. I mean, how's that any different?
I mean, but the thing is like I said, I'm not saying he's a piece of shit, but and the laws are fucked up.
Fuck law.
But, you know, you gotta I mean, what are you gonna do? You know, I mean, if you want these guys to feel the full extent of the law, then you kind of gotta go with the flow on that.
I just wonder if it's any different over there than it is here, because you could rape a child in the United States and only get a 5 or 8 year sentence max.
I mean, can't imagine it's that much different
They should
there.
Just plug them.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just my opinion.
I mean, that's a good opinion though, because the thing is these aren't like individuals that should be trusted around other human beings again for the rest of their lives.
Fuck no. I like how their justification too is that they're women, they're not children. You know, they were 11 years old, they're women. And they're out at night or they're outside by themselves without an escort. So, of course, they're just sex slaves.
So what they're saying is that they deserve it?
Fuck. I mean, goddamn, their Prophet Muhammad is I mean, he married a 6-year-old.
I'm not trying to get into that.
I'm not either. I'm just saying. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah. So, basically, the thing is like, you got to think just on the social context of this. This is not like they wanted to keep this whole sex grooming thing low key. They didn't want a lot of press about it and stuff like that. And there's a reason for that, and that's because it goes against their narrative.
Right.
Their narrative is supposed to be happy refugees coming to England and being productive members of society, and those kind of stories go against the grain of what they're trying to indoctrinate people with. So the problem is on the social aspect. That's where most people are going to cite though why he's going to prison.
Yeah, because
he is going against the grain that they're trying to.
He's bucking the system.
Yeah, he's bucking the system. He's trying to stop people from being like, oh, everything's okay and da da da. Well, no, it's not, because if you look at other countries, like I watched this video from Sweden just yesterday. And women are talking about like how their lives have changed since the influx of refugees to their countries, and like talking about, well, you know, and talking about how they're constantly being like molested and groped and stuff like that on public transit system and da da da. And there's this old fucking Swedish motherfucker like, why don't you just talk to the police? Tell the police. And they're like, the police, we've already done that. The police aren't doing anything.
That's what there were several points that he made I thought were spot on in that hour and a half live stream he did, but. There was one guy that walked up to him and he was like, "You're a wanker." He's like, "Why am I a wanker?" He's like, "This is none of your business. This happened to you?" He's like, "They're raping children. It's everybody's business."
Yeah.
You know, he's trying to be the standard of protecting these kids.
Yeah.
But some of the people over there don't give a shit. They're like, "It's got nothing to do with you."
Yeah.
But then he had another probably 8 out of 10 people that walked by and wanted this picture and wanted to shake his hand and stuff.
Yeah.
They're good job.
Yeah.
You know that. This is why anybody that's for gun control should understand what happens when they take your guns away.
There's something backwards going on in the UK right now. Like I remember there was a big scuff up because someone broke into someone else's house and was intruding on their property, and the person stabbed them to death for being in their house.
Yeah,
like the homeowner stabbed them to death, and people were laying flowers and memorials to the person who broke into the house.
Eat a fucking dick.
And they were getting all pissed off because people kept coming through and taking down the memorials. Like, are you you're laying down wreaths and flowers for a motherfucker that broke into somebody's house, and you're all sad and shit because he got killed? I mean, I hate to bring back our old catchphrase, but play stupid games, win stupid prizes, for fuck's sake.
These violent delights have violent ends.
There you go, yeah. That's like a more eloquent way of saying the original phrase. I
heard, this is the last random tangent I'll get on, but I wanted to mention it. Mark Passio was just on Higher Side Chats on the newest episode, And he said something to me, like, not to me directly, of course, but on the podcast that fucked me up. Mm-hmm. One of my catchphrases in the last couple of years has been, none of this is real. Mm-hmm. But I think that's in reference to the system, right? All this, like where we work.
Yeah.
The narrative is that it is a certain way, and it's definitely not that way. It's the same way with the government.
Yeah.
There's a certain narrative they try to uphold, and it's all fake. Mm-hmm. So that's not real. And Pascal was like, think about it this way. The deepest form of love that you can have is not necessarily love for another person, but the love of truth.
Yeah.
So much like Mark Pascal, Bones and Tubbs are ambassadors of truth.
We love the truth.
Even though it hurts.
I think we should get on to what we're going to be doing in this two-parter.
Zionism and Gaza. West Bank.
So before we start, I would love to give a shout-out. I couldn't find his name just now. I went to look for it. Listening to a different podcast about this because he goes way into depth on the issue that we're talking about today. Do you know his name by chance?
I don't, but I can check.
Okay, so the podcast is called Martyr Made. If you want like a way more in-depth version of what we're about to give to you guys, that would be the route to go. Each episode's like over 2 hours long. He gives huge detail on the history and the back context, which we're only going to be scraping the surfaces of. Like I said, our podcast has never been about like getting into the super nitty gritty. Ours is to pique the interest of a certain topic that maybe you would want to look more into in the future. That being said, podcast name is Martyr Made.
Yeah, it doesn't have his name on here. Definitely Martyr Made, all one word.
Yeah.
Martyr Made podcast.
You can find it on all the podcatchers. It's amazing.
Check it out, yeah.
Fear and Loathing in Jerusalem, parts 1, 2, and 3.
Some of them are 2-3 hours long.
Yeah.
He definitely did not skim or skip over any information.
No, and he gives a very unbiased approach to the whole thing, I believe.
So, do you want to handle the history of where Zionism came from?
Yeah. Yeah, I can do that.
What did you think of the story that he told at the very beginning?
It was interesting.
Kind of set the tone.
Yeah, it definitely. I like how he gave commentary on it. It was basically like, I was debating whether I wanted to tell that story before I started, but he's like, I feel like it sets it up well, and I have to agree with him. It sets it up very well.
Do you want me to give a Cliff Notes version?
Yeah, you can give a Cliff Notes
version. A bastardized version of it?
Yeah.
So he starts out the first episode by saying, close your eyes and picture yourself in this perspective. You just laid down. It's nighttime. You're trying to sleep. You just had a long, hard day's work, and you've got one ahead of you. You're stressed out because, the third child's on the way? Your wife's pregnant again. You've got 2 other children. You're kind of stressed out because you don't know exactly how you're going to make ends meet because it's harder and harder for you to find work for people like you. And people are becoming more and more hostile towards you in the area that you live. And, you've had to explain to your children why people are so hostile in a kid-friendly kind of way, why your wife has to travel down different streets to avoid being screamed at, stuff like that. But you feel that your wife has always been the kind of, the solid rock. You're always the worrier. So she's asleep, clearly she's not worried, so why should you be worried? So he asks you to listen to her breathing, to kind of calm you down. You almost fall asleep, and then you hear glass breaking down the street. And you're like, it could be anything. And then as you start to fall back asleep, you hear screaming. Raised voices, more glass closer to your house breaking. This time she wakes up and she's kind of bugging out. Mm-hmm. You hear more screaming, so then you get up and you go and you get your children who are already awake and freaked out. Then you hear people gathering outside your house. So you gather your family up and you take off out the back door down the alleyway as you hear them kick your front door in. Mm-hmm. And you're just running and running. And as you look into the houses of your neighbors, you see people attacking them with kitchen implements or random
clubs and torches.
Yeah. These people you've bought stuff from at the store, you've done work for in the past, they're your other neighbors, mm-hmm. in the community. And as you reach the end of the alleyway, you see a police officer, and you're kind of, you're calm. So you go up and you start telling him about all the attacks and what's going on, just as you realize he's bringing that nightclub down on your forehead. Mm-hmm. And everything blacks out. And then you wake up and there's a gang of 3 or 4 guys raping your wife. Your children are lying in bloody heaps at their feet. And a group of kids are taking what little valuables you had out of your house as they burn it to the ground. Mm-hmm. And then somebody smashes your head with a hammer. Yeah. And you're dead.
You have a really good memory.
Yeah.
Like that's not even a Cliff Notes version of it. That's like almost like super good word for word version of that story that he tells at the beginning.
I've been doing a lot of Alpha Brain.
Yeah, and it's powerful. And basically, he wraps it up with the notion like this story could have been anywhere in Europe, in Eastern Europe.
It wasn't a fake story. It could have happened anywhere.
Yeah.
Was it Ukraine,
Russia. You gotta understand. So the history begins, I feel like, in the 17th or 18th century and 19th century, when in Imperial Russia and the Ukraine and parts of Eastern Europe, every once in a while they decide to do a pogrom in a town.
Now, pogrom was just a random...
It's just a word ascribed to ethnic cleansing.
Right, but it wasn't like a very scantily planned, but it was like everybody joined in.
Yeah.
Like, what was the one? Was it in Ukraine where they had an Easter celebration, and then at the Easter celebration they were like, let's kill the Jews.
Yeah.
And they all fucking took to the streets and started murdering.
Yeah, basically they were just like fucking... Pogroms were just people venting their frustration.
Man.
And cleansing ethnic populations, and they're mostly associated with Jews.
Yeah.
They're not, like, pogroms were, and the thing is, and this is where the first notions of modern Zionism began to take root, because people, certain sects of, prominent Jews began to realize that it didn't matter where they went, they were always going to be persecuted.
Yeah, because they were going everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they were scattered all over Europe.
All over the flat earth.
And they were in the they had immigrated to the United States, where in parts of Western Europe and the United States, they weren't receiving as much. There were no pogroms. There was nothing like that.
No physical violence, but he said that the reports of, the time, if anything like that in the United States had happened to the Jews of today, it'd be fucking crazy. Just the amount of racism and pretty much just, suspicion.
Yeah.
And he said that the Jews could never win.
Well, yeah, because they said that, like, in times of plenty, they were, like, accused of, like, basically being in control and hoarding money and stuff like that. And
Jewelry, hoarding.
Yeah. And in times in lean times, they were accused of being the ones who had caused it in the first place.
Right. They were forced into work that was considered less than respectable.
And that's the crazy part.
Banking and lawyering.
Exactly.
And stuff like that.
And the thing is, they were forced into it in a time when those things weren't very lucrative.
Right.
But as time goes on, those became lucrative careers. And
the Jews.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They control the banking and all this shit.
Right.
Like,
you force them into banking, you ignorant fuck.
It's kind of like how, like, in the United States, we forced Chinese immigrants into two professions, restauranting or clothes cleaning.
Yeah.
So now it's a stereotypical thing, but at one point in time, that was the only careers that were allotted to them.
Both of those things they do really well because they were forced to do it.
Yeah. I mean,
Railroads.
the food's delicious.
Or whatever. Yeah, it is.
I'm just saying.
It is really good.
But to wrap up the mentality of some of these proto-Zionists, I have a thing from Theodor Herzl from 1896. It's from his pamphlet, A Jewish State. I believe that a wondrous generation of Jews will spring into existence. The Maccabeans will rise again. Let me repeat once more my opening words. The Jews will wish to have a state, and they shall have one. We shall live at last as free men on our own soil and die peacefully in our home. The world will be freed by our liberty, enriched by our wealth, magnified by our greatness, and whatever we attempt there to accomplish for our own welfare will react with beneficent force for the good of humanity. That was Theodor Herzl. So even back in the 1800s, there was already the beginnings of trying to figure out a ethnic home for Jews away from Europe. Not just Jewish communities in European nations, its own nation.
Right.
And, I mean, if you know anything about the Bible or history, you would realize that when they start talking about needing this home, of course, the place that they would want it to be at was their ancestral home before their exile.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, and let's put in the context here, they were in exile for 2,000 years, scattered across all of Europe, right? And every Passover, they would, do their Passover prayer, and it always ended the same. Next year in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, you gotta understand, this is 2,000 years of people saying the same thing every year,
right.
that they're going to go back home. right?
Yeah.
So then begins the process of trying to convince people to immigrate back to Israel, which is now part of the Ottoman Empire and is Palestine, right?
Yeah.
So, but the problem is...
There weren't too many people in Palestine at the time.
No, there was a lot of people in Palestine. The problem is that the people who were heading these first big movements to pushes for Jews to immigrate back to Jerusalem and Palestine were telling people that Palestine was basically an unsettled land with very few natives.
Yeah, he mentions the empire mentality, too.
As I say, you got to remember, this is in a time when Europe, where these Jews were at, were still in their colonial imperial eras. So, like, they were... it wasn't a stretch for them, one, to call these people who had lived here for thousands of years, just to call them natives.
Right.
And to be like, oh, well, they're not going to mind us being there.
Well, native, didn't that just denote the fact that there was a pretty much a mentality as such that simply by being a native, that you were just kind of like a less than human?
Yeah.
You
weren't important because you were a native.
You were a part of the land, like a rock or a tree. Pretty much.
Yeah.
You weren't deserving of, like, basic human rights or anything like that. I mean, you were just a native.
They were seen as more of, like, a...
Native American. Anyway.
More or less like they were, like a nuisance.
Background noise, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's... we didn't tell you at the beginning of the show, but we had toe beans and... I don't have a name for you.
Not your government name.
Dat dude.
Dat boy.
We got toe beans and Dat boy.
Dat boy.
With us today on the casting couch listening to the show.
Yeah.
But anyway, so... Taking into context, like, the time that they were starting this was a time when, if you're a European, you can look at, like, native people and be like, ugh.
Uncivilized filth.
Yeah. So, like, and then you had multiple approaches to it. You had some people who were like, they were the kind of Zionists where they're like, listen, let's not go for, like, some sort of crazy state and validation and da-da-da. Let's just start immigrating there, and we'll raise up the country with our ability, like, you know, because they were in the trades. Mm-hmm. They were into economics, and they were into trading, and they were into all those things. So they had learned these crafts in Europe, and they're like, let's bring these to Palestine and raise up this part of the world. And just by our mere ability to raise up these people, they will welcome us in. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. There's with that group. And that group is the only one I really could have any kind of, like, sympathy for.
Yeah, the non-militant...
non-ethnic state Zionists.
At what point did it change from the idealistic empire to the ones where they mentioned, like, he mentioned the Zionists that knew for a fact that there were people there that were going to be adamantly against them moving in as their own ethno-state?
Well, see, yeah, that's the thing, like... The heads of it knew the whole time that was eventually going to be a problem.
They're like, we just won't mention the fact that we're going to take all this for ourselves.
They also kept it under their lids that they wanted an ethnic state.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing.
We don't want to say it right out the rip, I guess.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. Like, okay, so in a modern context, let's look at it like this. So if you look at, like, people who are, like, you know, the crazy, like... Because the thing is, like, being anti-Zionist and not being anti-Semitic... You don't put the two together, right?
Well, there's no context. People don't understand the difference. I didn't.
But the thing is, it's like, think about it like this. Like, if you didn't want people having conspiracy theories about you and the way you thought things, you shouldn't have kept it a secret, and which they did. That's reported.
Which is the definition of a conspiracy.
That they kept it back. They said, don't tell anybody that we don't trust, that our ultimate goal is to create a ethnic state.
It's like a different version of La Raza for the Mexicans.
Like how like and they kept it amongst themselves. Like, how is that? Like, you want to talk about there's not a conspiracy, but there was a conspiracy.
There was in fact a conspiracy.
Yeah. So the first few pushes for immigration weren't like big; they were small.
Yeah,
small groups, and it was a mixed bag because, like I said, you had those ones that were like the nationalistic ethnic state Zionists. You had the ones that were like, no, let's go there and help them. And then you had like different political factions too, because you had like socialists and communists. You know,
they were the heads of a lot of the communist revolutions, weren't they?
Well, yeah,
they were trying to fight against the established.
Because that's systems. The thing. Like, they like talked about. I think he laid it best. He's like, basically in Europe, Jews had two ways to go for the most part. You either rise to the top and you become a part of the government, or you become big in banking or whatever, or you went to the bottom. and you became a revolutionary or a rebel. Mm-hmm. And most of that during that time, most of those revolutionaries and rebels were socialists.
One of the things just real quick, I wanted to mention that he said really succinctly in his podcast, the Martyr Made podcast, was, word association. He's like, when people hear words, it's natural for you to have some type of stereotypical image in your head, right?
Yeah.
It's just how the brain works. Mm-hmm. So if someone mentions Englishman, you might think of one of those fluffy-headed soldiers standing out in front of, what is it? I don't know what they call it.
Buckingham Palace?
Yeah, Buckingham Palace. Or, when he mentioned Zionism, he's like, you might think of...
like an old Jewish man.
One of the Hasidic Jews that's, praying in front of the Wailing Wall. And he's like, if you have that image in your head, get rid of it right now.
Yeah, because those aren't real... those aren't the modern Zionists.
No, the true meaning of Zion is at the time of the recorded part of history that he was talking about. To think of a Zionist was more of a guy throwing a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
A revolutionary doing the dirt.
Yeah. And and plus also you got to remember, in the western parts of Europe and the Americas, it was a harder sell for Zionism because the Western Jews did not feel the pressure like Eastern European Jews, like in Russia and Ukraine and stuff like that. They just weren't feeling it. Mm-hmm. Like he mentions, it kind of changed a little bit because of the Dreyfus affair, where there was a French general who was Jewish, Dreyfus, and they tried to pin. They found out that the Germans were getting secrets about the French military, right?
Yeah,
and they pinned it on Dreyfus, and then they sent him to prison. And then come to find out, they got evidence that Dreyfus didn't do it.
Yeah, like stone evidence proving it.
So he was proven innocent. Then the military put him back on trial, found him guilty again, and sent him back to prison.
To cover up the fact that they fucked up in the first place.
Yeah. So that's not to say that there wasn't anti-Semitism in the West. There was.
Oh, for sure.
But it wasn't... See, the thing is, the West lacked the pogroms. The West lacked that general, absolute distrust, hatred, and ethnic cleansing of Jews and minorities that you didn't see in the West.
Yeah.
And the thing is, especially in England, where... because you had English Zionists who would try to recruit people, and most of them were like, fuck off with that shit, dude.
Yeah, eat a dick.
They're like, I'm not a Jew living in England, I'm an English Jew.
Right. They moved past
thinking they were a Jew in a strange land. No, they were an Englishman.
Right, they were accepted in Western society.
Exactly.
And they were an integral part of that community.
Yeah, so in that case, immigration to Israel really didn't see that much of an influx for that time. It was a very
slow trickle.
It was a very slow trickle. Enter the Nazi Party.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Okay, enter their pogroms. Mm-hmm. The trickle begins to flow.
They were actually blocked at that time, weren't they?
Yeah, but you gotta remember that before Germany started invading Eastern European countries, they saw what was on the horizon.
Yeah,
and they were starting. So the trickle begins to flow a little harder now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And you get German Jews trying to flee Germany in mass out of the country. It gets so bad that France starts turning them around.
Yeah, I heard there was a long list of different countries where there was a boat that left Germany filled with Jews.
They came to the United States. The United States turned them around.
Yeah, every country they went to were like, no.
They eventually had, the only port they had left was in Germany.
Fuck!
They had no choice to come back. I mean, it got so, they had the kinder transports too. Yeah. I actually met, there was a man who used to run the Wright-Patterson Air Force Holocaust exhibit. Mm-hmm. His name was Felix. He was one of the children on a kinder transport. That basically all it was Jews, middle-class Jews and families they knew shit was bad. This is early 1934, 36, somewhere in there, right?
Yeah.
And they're putting their children on these trains and sending them and getting them legal passport to England. Because they wouldn't take everybody, but they'd take the children.
Were they the same trains where it would show historical pictures of parents crying, giving their babies to strangers?
Yeah.
On trains? Mm-hmm. Man, could you imagine that?
I don't want to imagine it.
Right.
I don't want to imagine it. And that's why when we started doing this episode, I have a really hard time with a lot of this because they endured a lot of fucking hardship.
Yeah.
But we're going to get further on in this.
Yeah.
So World War II begins, and as anybody who knows anything knows, so did the Holocaust. And the thing is immigration to Israel at the time kind of stopped again, because I mean, as we all know, they were being held in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Not allowed to leave.
Yeah. So
it's weird. Not allowed to leave anyway. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So the Holocaust happens, and the war is over. The Nazi regime gets taken down, and Jews really don't have. I mean, We're talking about German, Polish, all of Eastern Europe. They don't have a place to go anymore.
Yeah.
There's no place they feel safe, because they can't just move back to their town. They can't just go back and live next to the neighbor who just like looked on apathetically while they were taken away and all their possessions were taken from them. How could you do that?
There's
can't
no
do
fucking
that.
way you could do that. Can I intercede real quick?
Yeah.
What do you think? What mostly allowed the Jews to be taken that way into the Holocaust? Was it the fact that they were not allowed to have firearms?
I would say that was a definitively big factor in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, firearms equal freedom is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
When it comes to a strong arm of the government, I would imagine they would be less apprehensive about taking people.
They can fight back.
Yeah, they can fight back. I mean, would you really want to storm into a house knowing that somebody could very well
shoot you in the fucking face?
Yeah,
right.
As you walk through the door?
Absolutely not. That's just it's something that comes up in this research, over and over again. There were two things that I noticed that I think need to be brought about in people's minds for the modern day. Mm-hmm. You should always have, if you're financially able, to stock up on food.
Yeah.
To just have it in hand, because what if you can't get to it, right? And never give up your firearms.
Yeah.
And none of this will ever happen again. Anyway, it continues.
Okay, so World War II ends, and the call for Zionism, mind you, there were Christian Zionists in England and the United States before this moment. And when I say Christian Zionists, I literally mean Christians who believed that the Jews belonged in Israel. And just as a side note, just in case anybody didn't know, the term Zionist comes from a hill in Jerusalem that's called Zion. Mm-hmm. That's why they're called Zionists. Back to Jerusalem. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I wanted to sidestep that just in case anybody didn't know where the term came from.
It's important to know that because, like I said, there's very little distinction. If you're I would say in the public perception, if you declare yourself an anti-Zionist, well, that must mean you're anti-Semitic. Yeah. When it's absolutely not the case. Okay, so after World War II, the winning powers realized that the Jews had no place in Eastern Europe anymore. They needed their own home, and you had a shitload of them, refugees all gathered up from all parts of the world. What were you going to do? They were considering giving them parts of Nevada? New Mexico, I heard too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what to do? So England kind of takes the lead on this one. Jews had made up their minds. They already knew where they wanted to go. Yeah. Because they had known, they had been hearing it for years. Like in their homes, they kept a little blue box where people would put pennies in and stuff like that. And it was saved to go to the Israeli National Trust. They'd send it in every time it got full, right? Yeah. And it would go, and it was kept a map of Israel. And it was money to secure people passage to Israel. Mm-hmm. That's what the design was for. So anyways, they already knew what they wanted to do. They started going en masse before England even stepped in. And that was actually a problem too, because I believe there was a bit of a skirmish over that. Because England hadn't officially given the go-ahead yet. And we were talking about mass amounts of refugees heading towards Israel. Mm-hmm. Or Palestine, I should say. It wasn't Israel yet. So, but when they finally got their shit together, they started shipping them to Israel. And by 1947, it got to the point where finally the clashes between the Arab native population and the Jewish population came to a head. And that is the end of part 1 of our series on Zionism and Gaza. Yes. Hopefully we found a good spot to end that. Yeah. We'd like to thank you all for listening. Come back next week to hear more. Part 2. Get into that juices. Man, I know I went a little hard there. Yeah. We'd like to thank you all for listening. We'd like to thank Ryan Simpson for letting us use his music on the show. Go check us out on Patreon. Patreon.com/Bones and Tubs.
Check out our Instagram, Facebook,
Some new rewards on the Patreon.
Yeah.
Also, I'll re-mention again, it's weird, but we got those bumper stickers. We're giving away bumper stickers.
Yeah.
For a review on iTunes.
Or subscribe on YouTube.
Stitcher, or subscribe on YouTube. Send us a screenshot of one of those three or all those three activities, and we will send you some bumper stickers.
Bumper stickers for free.
Sending some out today.
But, so stay tuned next time for part 2, our piece. And we'll see you all next time.
Check out the Instagram for pictures of me getting sunburned. We love you.
We really do.